Okay, so it's all been fun and games, and you've got your rose-colored glasses on, and the bulk insert task is so awesome. It's extremely fast. What does Scott mean? He said it was kind of a pain to work with, but it doesn't seem to be to me. It was just seemingly easy. Okay, let's get into it. Let's take something non-standard. Let's take something like you remember we had our text file here where we changed the 100, 200, blah, 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 blah. Let me make that data 05. And let's see, you know what? I'm going to make a change. I want to replace comma 1998 with pipe, the little vertical bar. I know it looks like an L, but it's the little vertical bar key. And I'm just going to replace them all. Okay, you see it? Yeah. So we now have a file with multiple delimiters. Okay. Got comma, comma, pipe. Ooh. Okay. Let's go back. Why be deterred, Scott? Come on. This can't be so terrible. Let's just silly. Data 05. Hate it when it does this. Data 05. And there. Now. And you know what? I'm just going to copy the text out of our table. Oh, that was just data 4. So I'm going to copy that. So data 05. And that was our create table company department script, right? So to the data 5. Same thing as the last video. Table prep. Come over here. Let's choose our connection, and we'll choose a file connection. I'm blazing through this because we've just done this, right? We just did this in the last video. So we're going to execute the contents of this particular SQL file, which creates the table, deletes the table, drops the table rather, and then creates it. And then we want to bulk insert it. Connection, destination, run it first. Company departments table, same thing we did the last video. Okay. Specify, what is column delimiter? How can I say that it's both a comma, that some columns have a comma and some have the vertical bar? How can I can't? No, no, I can't. See, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? Let's choose our data 5 dot text. You see, therein lies our difficulty. We're dealing with a file that has multiple delimiters. When you're dealing with complex files or files with multiple delimiters or files in which you want to skip a column, you don't want to load up, say, column 4, you only want to load up columns 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, etc. You can't just use this specify. You have to use what's called a format file. Format files are atrocious to work with. It used to be that in DTS, you could have DTS, this was DTS 2000, you could have DTS actually generate your format files very easily. Unfortunately, the bulk insert task will not do that for us here. There are a couple of ways that you can generate your format files. You can handwrite them, which can be somewhat of a challenge. You can get a hint, a very good hint, in fact, of how to write format files. You're in the bulk insert task, you go to the connection tab, and you just click help, go to the bottom of the page. And you see the other resources you want to go with working with format files. So you're going to click, and then that takes you to another section about how to create. So this is really your page that you want. And look Hi, something about using the BCP utility to create a default format file? Well, so we go learn about creating format files and we can hand write them, or we can use this utility bcp.exe to generate a format file for us. Aha. Okay, so we can actually have it created by using this particular syntax. BCP, you're going to have to dump down to the command line to run this. It's an executable. So you pass in the table, you say you want a format file, you pass in the file that you want it to actually create. Oh wow, it can't be any more difficult than that. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's got this document actually has a lot of examples. So you can actually, like if I want to create a character data file, here's how I do it. This is the exact, oh man, it just zooms too much in. This is the exact logic that I use. Okay, I use BCP. This is, okay, cool. Let's do it actually. Let's go to run the command prompt. Let's just take it and say BCP AdventureWorks dot human resources dot department. And you know this would probably be in a batch file, right? You know that. Okay. Format, null, C for character data, generate the format here in C colon department dot FMT and dash T, and let's, okay, look at this. Here we go, department.format. Sweet, look at that. Yeah, look at that. That's ugly. What is all this junk here? Well, it tells us here that we're on version 10.0. 10.0 being SQL Server 2008. If you use a 10.0 file, you cannot take this back and run it on a SQL 2005 database. So since there's really no big differences here between 10.0 and 9.0 in what we're doing, it's pretty safe from a backwards compatibility standpoint to say 9.0. Okay, 9.0 being SQL Server 2005. How many rows? How many columns are we dealing with? 4. Column number 1. It is a SQL character based column. It has a maximum of 7 characters. It's going to be terminated by a tab, and the position is number 1, and that is going to map to the department ID column. Sweet. Okay, same thing here. Here we're going to match, have a maximum of 100. Here 100 again for the group name, 24 for the modified date. And the modified date, look at that. What is /r/n? Well, guess what? This, just get right here, this is the same thing that we saw in bulk insert as the control line feed. That is the new line character representation. Okay, so what it's saying is that it expects, this format file expects that there's a tab between each of the rows, not a comma. It's telling us /t is a tab, and that at the end, the very final row is row number 4, and it terminates the row with /r/n. Oh, this is horrible to write, isn't it? I mean, imagine having to write all of this and generate it, but it's cool that BCP did it for us, right? You dig that. We have to make a minor change. We have to go say, no, you know what? I don't want the tab character. I would like the comma, right? Because what I have to do is I have to match my format file to the actual source data. So the source data has comma, 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 and then line feed. Except the last one doesn't. It has the pipe character. Okay? So what we're saying here is that group name ends when the pipe character is found. And that is then the beginning of the modified date column. So a format file allows us very easily to deal with multiple delimiters in a file. We can skip certain columns in a file. Now, let's talk about the types of format files. This is just your plain old BCP format file that we've had for over a decade. It's somewhat archaic today, though. So I can close this out. This would run, by the way. If I go back over to, where's my integration service? And I say use the file, and I now choose department.format, and I say go. It should load it up successfully because we've put the right information in. Oh, but we did get an error message here. Bulk load conversion, row 1, column 1. I bet that I didn't tell it to skip the first row. I didn't. You remember how the first row had column names? So I've got to say, I do that all the time. And I also want to do my enable identity insert. I get to talk and I forget. Okay. So just coming over here, company department has a bunch of rows. Let's just go ahead and delete the rows in there. So it's empty, which the table prep is going to delete the table, drop it anyway. But now we use our format file. The format file was successful in telling SQL Server Integration Services that the delimiter between group name and modified date is different from the delimiter between the other columns. Right? However, like I said, this is old school. Let me go back. This format file is old school, right? This is, I'd way rather not have to write this. Now I have saved this file as included in this video in the zip as data05. Let me just put a thing between that. So data05 FMT. So it is included, so you can actually take a look at it and see what it does. Now let's go back to our documentation. So scrolling up, we're in this creating a format file document, and you'll notice the two options. If you minimize these, there are two: creating a non-XML format file .fmt, that's what we just created, or creating an XML format file, what we're about to do. Okay, the .fmt is old school. Like I said, been around for 15 years or so. So the new way of doing things, the SQL 2005 and higher way, is creating an XML format file. So an XML format, it's going to be a format file, is going to be a little bit more verbose, but I think it's actually easier to work with, and you get a better picture of data types and mapping. So you could see the difference in the syntax here. Really about the only difference is this -x. Okay, that's really the difference here. Scroll down, you can pick out yourself an example here. I'm going to use the character data. If you remember from the previous video when we talked about native mode, that is specifically for loading into another SQL server, not for loading into something like Oracle or DB2. Exporting to character makes it so that I could load it into Excel, Oracle, DB2. But if I did load it into SQL Server, it would be slower than native mode. Okay, so native mode is optimized for SQL Server loads. Okay. I'll show you another parameter that I often use, and that is specifying the field terminator. So I can throw in the -t, and I can put the pipe, which would separate them with a pipe. I can put the comma. So that's it. You can use your example straight from here to generate it. And in fact, I'll show you a little trick. You copy that little piece there, go to the command prompt. I'm hitting the start key and R to pull up the run prompt. And if I go up here to the top, to the little blue bar up here, I can paste, edit, paste the code. Right? So it doesn't like something that I put in. Oh, sorry. I don't see where that character is that it complains about. Strange. I don't see that character. Must have something to do with the copy and paste though. So I'll try this. .xml. Okay, so this -t here is our trusted connection to open a known argument. Okay, I don't know what I'm typing in, or there's clearly some character, but we'll just do it here. -c says to make it a character file, as opposed to -n, which says make a native mode file. -x says make the XML format file. Dash T says make the terminator the comma, and the dash capital T, you'll notice it is case sensitive, says use a trusted connection to connect to SQL Server. I still don't see the difference. I guess this is something unusual. But it did actually create our file. And here's what it looks like. I'll open it with Visual Studio. I'm partial to the Visual Studio XML interface here. Okay, I did that just for production to get your attention there. The door rang and the dog barked, so I had to break. So if you'll cut me back in. All right, here. So 3, 2, 1. So I'm looking at it here. Let me just give us a little bit more space here. This is the XML file. You can see we have the namespace up here, the BCP format. You can see that we actually have to define the fields in the actual source and then the rows in the table that they match, and look at the data types are now something that we recognize. So that's nice that we can actually specify what data types. Notice you specify the collation now. This is your SQL Server collations. This is where you specify these. You can do so in a column by column format here. So you're not doing this on the whole file as a whole. You can specify different collations for different fields in the actual column. Here's your terminator. Notice it generated it with the comma. So I need to put my pipe right there. So it's fairly easy to understand. You're going to be using your car term, care term, char term, however you want to say it there, generally for a character-based file that you're working with, not for when you're working with a native file. And that's it. I mean, there's really no effective difference between using a FMT file versus an XML file. If they do the same thing, they do the same thing. I think it's just easier to work with the XML. So I take a look and it generated the departments.xml. It's going to have the exact same effect. It's not going to be any different from running the FMT file. So, you could write them by hand. You can figure it out. But the BCP utility is so easy and generates this for us. The only thing that we're left to wish for is, I wish there was a button like there used to be in DTS that we could generate the format file directly from within SSIS.